the Iraqi regime's violation of every condition set forth by the UN Security Council for the 1991 ceasefire that Iraq signed onto after losing a war of aggression fully justifies. Legally and morally, the enforcement of those conditions. It is also true that since 9/11, our nation is properly focused as never before on preventing attacks before they happen. Now, the national security strategy does not, as sometimes reported, overturn 5 decades of doctrine and jettison either containment or deterrence. These strategic concepts can and will be employed when appropriate. But some threats are so potentially catastrophic and can arrive with so little warning. By means that are untraceable, that they cannot be contained. Extremists who seem to view suicide as a sacrament are unlikely to ever be deterred. And new technology requires new thinking about when a threat actually becomes imminent. So as a matter of common sense, the United States must be prepared to take action. When necessary, before threats fully materialize. Now, preemption is not a new concept. There has never been a moral or a legal requirement that a country wait to be attacked before it can address existential threats. My good friend, George Shultz, recently put it very well: if there is a rattlesnake in the yard, you don't wait for the rattlesnake to strike before you take action in self-defense. The United States has long affirmed the right to anticipatory self-defense. From the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 to the crisis on the Korean Peninsula in 1994. To be sure, this approach has to be treated with great caution. The number of cases in which preemption is justified will be and should be small. It does not give a green light to the United States or any other. Nation to act first without looking to other means, including diplomacy. Preemptive action does not come at the beginning of the chain of effort. And the threat must be grave. And the risks of waiting should outweigh the risks of action. But to be sure, the President of the United States has no obligation to wait until threats. Gather and have become impossible to deal with before the United States of American acts. To support all these means of defending the peace. The United States will build and maintain 21st century military forces that are beyond challenge. We will seek to dissuade any potential adversary from pursuing a military. Build up in the hope of surpassing or equaling the power of the United States. Now, some have criticized this frankness as impolitic. But surely clarity is a virtue here. Dissuading military competition. Can prevent potential conflict and costly global arms races. And the United States invites, indeed, exhorts our freedom-loving allies. Such as those in Europe, to increase their military capabilities. The burden of maintaining a balance of power that favors freedom should not be shouldered. Only by the United States but by all nations that favor freedom and have benefited from it. What none of us should want is the emergence of a militarily powerful adversary who does not share our values. Thankfully, this possibility seems more remote today than at any point in our lifetime. We have an historic opportunity to break the destructive pattern of great power rivalry that has bedeviled the world since the rise of the nation-state. Today, the world's great centers of power are united by common interests. Common dangers, and increasingly and hopefully, common values. The United States will make this a key strategy for preserving the peace for many decades to come. There's an old argument between the so-called realist school of foreign affairs and the so-called idealist school To oversimplify, realists are said to downplay the importance of values and internal structures of states. Emphasizing instead the balance of power as the key to remaining stability. Idealists emphasize the primacy of values. Such as freedom and democracy and human rights in ensuring that a just political order is obtained. Now, as a professor, I recognize that this debate has won tenure for many and sustained the career's end. The publications of generations of scholars, yours and yours truly, included, and Fareed as well. But as a policymaker, I can tell you that this obscures reality. In real life, power and values are married completely. Power matters in the conduct of world affairs. Great powers matter a great. Deal. They have an ability to influence the lives of millions and change history. Great powers do not mind their own business, and the values of great powers matter as well. If the Soviet Union had won the Cold War, the world would look very different today. Germany. Today might look like the German Democratic Republic, and Latin America might look like Cuba. Today, there is an increasing awareness on every continent that there is a paradigm of progress that is founded on political and economic liberty. The United States, our NATO allies, our neighbors in the Western Hemisphere. Japan, and our other friends in Asia and Africa. Of many of them share a broad commitment to democracy. The rule of law, a market-based economy, and open trade. In addition, since September 11 the world's great powers see themselves as falling on the same side of a profound divide between forces of chaos and order, and they are acting accordingly. Now, America and Europe have long shared a commitment to liberty. We also now understand that being the target of trained killers is a powerful tonic that makes disputes over other issues look like policy differences, the policy differences that they are, not fundamental clashes of values. Russia is an important partner in the war on terror and is reaching towards a future of greater democracy and economic freedom. As it does so, our relationship will continue to broaden and deepen. The passing of the ABM Treaty and the signing of the Moscow Treaty reducing strategic arms. By 2/3 make clear that the days of Russian U.S. military confrontation are over. China and the United States are also cooperating on issues ranging from The fight against terror to maintaining stability on the Korean Peninsula. And China's internal transformation continues. In some areas, China's leaders follow practices that are abhorrent. Yet, China's leaders have said that their main goal is to raise living standards for the Chinese people. Now, they will find that if they are to reach that goal in today's world, they will have to depend more on developing China's human capital than on China's natural resources or territorial possessions. That is an iron law of economic liberty. And as China's population becomes more educated and more economically free, more free to think, more entrepreneurial, less dependent on the government for their livelihood. This will inevitably lead to calls for political freedom, too. The fact is, you cannot expect people to think at work, and not at home. This confluence of common interests and increasingly common values creates a moment of enormous opportunity. Instead of repeating the historic pattern where great power rivalry exacerbates local conflicts, we can use great power cooperation to solve conflicts, from the Middle East to Kashmir, to the Congo, and beyond. Great power cooperation also creates an opportunity for multilateral institutions, such as the UN, NATO. And the WTO, to prove their worth. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the challenge set forth by the President Bush 3 weeks ago to the UN concerning Iraq. and great power cooperation can be the basis for moving forward on problems. That require multilateral solutions from terror to the environment. Finally, to build a balance of power that favors freedom. We must also extend the benefits to those who do not yet enjoy liberty and prosperity. As the President has said, we have a responsibility to build a world that is not only safer, but better. That has always been the American way. The American flag has stood for power and the American flag has stood for freedom. The United States will fight poverty, disease, and oppression because it is the right thing to do, and it is the smart thing to do. We have seen how poor states can become weak or even failed states, vulnerable to hijacking by terrorist networks. With potentially catastrophic consequences as in Afghanistan. And in societies where legal avenues for political dissent are stifled. The temptation to speak through violence does grow. We will lead efforts to build a global trading system that is growing and more free. Here in our own hemisphere, for example, we are committed to completing a free trade area of the Americas by (2005), and we're starting negotiations on free trade agreements with the South African Customs Union. Expanding trade is essential to the development efforts. Expanding trade is essential to the development efforts. Of poor nations and to the economic health of all nations. We will continue to lead the world in efforts to combat HIV/AIDS, a pandemic. Which challenges our humanity and threatens whole societies.